If I'm being honest, I used to complain about everything. And I don't mean occasionally. I mean everything. Before my feet even hit the floor, my day had already annoyed me. I would walk into the kitchen and immediately find something wrong. The coffee brewed too slowly. If it brewed fast, it tasted weak. If it tasted strong, it was too bitter. I'd scroll my phone and complain about gas prices. I'd open the refrigerator and complain about grocery prices. It felt like the whole world had become inconvenient. My kids would come into the kitchen, still half asleep, and I'd snap at them before they even spoke. Why are you moving so slow? Why are your shoes still by the door? Why is this house always such a mess? Looking back now, they hadn't even done anything. But at the time, I thought I was just being honest. Well, that's what I told myself. I thought I was being realistic, and driving wasn't any better. Traffic lights were always red when I got there. Other drivers were always incompetent. I'd grip the steering wheel and mutter things under my breath, like the road personally had something against me. Then I'd stop for gas and stare at the pump like it had insulted my entire family. "Are you kidding me?" I'd say out loud. I complained about the light bill, the water bill. Oh yeah, and my hair and skin looked a mess. There was always something wrong. Always. Even things that were supposed to be fun irritated me. At restaurants, the food was never seasoned correctly. At the movie theater, the seats were uncomfortable and the popcorn was too salty. At clothing stores, nothing fit the way I wanted. And I always complained to the sales associate that the clothes cost too much. And when I got home, my kids were either too loud or too quiet. They needed too much attention, or somehow not enough. If I wanted to go out for the evening, I'd start calling babysitters. Half the time, nobody answered. And when nobody answered, I'd sigh dramatically and say something like, "Of course. Why would anything ever work out for me?" I didn't realize it then, but I had slowly turned my life into a running list of problems, and the strange thing was, the more I complained, the more miserable I felt. It was like I was surrounded by life, yet deeply unhappy. One afternoon, I overheard my youngest talking to a friend. "My mom's always mad even when nothing is wrong, and it scares me," he said quietly. I froze. The words hit harder than any bill, any price tag, or any inconvenience. But I just brushed it off and felt like my son just needed to get over it, because this is just how I am. Plus, I pay all the bills. One afternoon, I was standing in my kitchen again, complaining. I don't even remember exactly what I was actually complaining about. And then all of a sudden, there was a sharp pain in my side, and I was irritated that my body was acting up again. I remember holding my mug and saying something like, "Now this, too. Just great." And then the room tilted. The mug slipped out of my hand and shattered against the floor. Suddenly my chest felt tight. My breathing got shallow. The kitchen around me blurred like someone turned the focus knob on the world. I tried to say something, but the words came out thin and shaky for the first time in a long time. I wasn't complaining. I was scared. Then I woke up in a hospital room. Machines hummed quietly beside me. The room was cold and unbelievably still. There was no traffic, no bills, no prices to argue with, and no loud noises from my kids. There was just the steady beeping of a monitor. A doctor stood near my bed explaining things calmly about my exhaustion and stress. Then he told me that I've been running my body like it's invincible. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after he left, and strangely, I wanted to complain about the hospital bed, about the food, about the bright fluorescent lights, but suddenly those things felt small, because lying there, weak and quiet, I realized something uncomfortable. My body hadn't betrayed me. It had been trying to get my attention. When I came home, nothing had changed. The house looked exactly the same with the same clutter and noise. Normally, I would have walked in and pointed out everything wrong. But this time, I just sat down. My body was tired in a way complaining couldn't fix. I looked at my phone and noticed I had several missed calls and unread messages, and I thought about how close I had come to not being there to see any of them. The urge to complain came up like it always did. Then it just stopped, because suddenly it felt pointless. Recovery forced me to slow down. All I could focus on was the doctor's orders, which included short walks and lots of rest. And when you move slowly enough, you start noticing things. The way morning light comes through the window, the quiet sound of your own breathing, the way a calm house can actually feel peaceful. A few times I caught myself starting to complain again about the pain, the soreness, the fatigue, and about the inconvenience of resting. But then I would stop, not because I was trying to be positive, but because I was grateful to even have the chance to recover. One evening I sat alone on my couch wearing a pink sweatsuit. My hair was pulled into a messy bun. There was no television, no phone, just silence. And that's when something finally made sense. I realized I hadn't been miserable because life was terrible. I had been miserable because I was constantly arguing with reality, arguing with aging, arguing with inconvenience, arguing with things that were never meant to be perfect. My illness hadn't taken something from me. It had given me awareness. For the first time in a long time, I felt quiet inside. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Bills still arrived, but my body still had limits. The world was still inconvenient sometimes, but I learned something illness taught me that comfort never could. Life doesn't need to be argued with to be lived, so I stopped letting small frustrations dominate my entire day. Because sometimes the greatest gift isn't a better life. Sometimes it's the pause that reminds you you still have one.